But first, Huawei's chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou, was back in a Vancouver court today for a bail hearing. She was arrested December 1st in Vancouver. The U.S. alleges Meng violated its sanctions on Iran. American prosecutors want her extradited to face charges in the U.S. Meanwhile, the Chinese government is warning of, quote, grave consequences if she's not released. And Katie Simpson is here with a look at kind of what that might look like. What is the government saying about this drama that's unfolding?
Well, the Chinese are trying to exert pressure on Canada because they do not like what's going on, and they are targeting Canada rather than the United States at this point, because this process is taking place in Canada right now. We've heard from the Prime Minister today, who is digging in his heels and saying that this is not a political issue.
We are a country of the rule of law. We live up to our international obligations, and we trust our courts to do the right thing.
And so Chrystia Freeland actually just spoke at a forum in Toronto, and she sort of expanded on what the Prime Minister just said there. She went on at length to really hammer home the point, saying this was not a political decision. There was no political interference in there. And what I'm hearing from senior sources with direct knowledge of the situation is that Canada's having a difficult time getting that message to resonate in Beijing. That when in Canada, when they're in Beijing, they don't necessarily follow the same rule of law that they do here. And so that message is not really resonating. And that's why we're seeing such a ramp up of pressure in Canada to do something. But the Prime Minister, Foreign Minister today, making it clear that that is not going to be happening.
As a result, when we talk about China making threats, basically saying if you don't release her, something's going to happen, what is the possible list of what kind of pressure they might exert?
Well, you have to take a look at what China has done in the past, and there are a couple of clear examples here. In 2010, China punished Norway because there was a dispute over a Chinese dissident being awarded the Nobel Prize, and the award was actually placed on the winner's seat, an empty seat, because the dissident was in jail. After that happened, China declared that Norwegian salmon had some sort of disease or some sort of issue, and so all of a sudden, all of these exports from Norway to China, they dropped off. It was very difficult for Norway to sort of recover from that. And there are other instances, I believe, around the same time period. There was an issue with South Korea. Well, China introduced a ban to stop Chinese tourists from taking vacations in South Korea, and that's a huge hit to the South Korean tourism economy. So Canada could be hit in those ways. We spoke with David Mulroney earlier today, who's a former ambassador to China, and he says that Canada should brace for something because it's very clear that China is upset and Canada is the target they're picking.
Chinese have a technique they call kill a chicken, scare the monkeys. They pick on the smaller player to intimidate the larger player. Unfortunately, we happen to be the smaller player, the chicken, and the United States is the monkey in this. So we're going to take more heat for the time being.
So options available to the Chinese. They could pull some financial levers, some trade issues. I did reach out to a number of sectors that do a lot of trade with China, sell a lot of products. I checked in with the Canadian Lobster Council, the Canadian Pork Council, as well as the Canadian Canola Council. None of those councils have had any sort of direct threats that they're aware about, but obviously they're watching closely.
And we're going to check in with a trade expert next hour on the show. Thanks a lot, Katie. The CBC's Katie Simpson.